today I want to talk about Donald Trump. Well, I don't want to talk about Donald Trump. I can't help but talk about Donald Trump. It's the only thing we have in our news. Everybody has an overinflated concept of the importance of the United States. And Australians definitely have a delusional concept of the importance of Australia on the world stage. I try not to talk about these things as they're upsetting to a lot of people to hear such things. But the truth of the matter is, Australia doesn't mean crap to anybody outside of Australia, and we really need to start looking out for ourselves and stop following America down every crazy minefield they want to go down. They're not really that important. But the main thing I want to talk about today is tariffs. Now, to do that, I need to explain where I come from, the town I come from, and why tariffs are very important. Tariffs took away the future of a whole generation of people that live in Geelong. And as I looked into this morning, I found this on the internet, which is an article called Left Behind Neighbourhoods in Old Industrial Regions. And it's basically comparing Geelong to a town in Australia and OSHAWA in Canada, both car manufacturing cities. And it's about the people who were left behind due to the lifting of tariffs. What Geelong was before the lifting of tariffs and what it's become now. And I'm not going to read the whole article. It's more of a intellectual paper, but I just want to show you where I live and where I grew up. So we'll scoot it down here. This is an important read, and you should have a look at it if these sorts of things interest you. Now, these two graphs here show you the disadvantaged suburbs in Geelong, 2006 and 2016. I come from here. This is Newcomb and this is Whittington. They're two of the poorest suburbs in all of Australia. 10 years later, that area's gotten bigger. Now, these are all the people who used to work. These are all the people who used to work at Fords and Shell, and these are all the people who used to work at Ford, Shell, and this place here was Alcoa. Alcoa is important because it makes aluminium. We had tariffs on everything right up until the 1970s, from the Menzies government to the Fraser government to the Whitlam government. We had governments that had a goal of eliminating poverty in Australia. All those governments couldn't understand why we have poverty in a country that's so rich, and implemented policies to lift people out of poverty. And then we got the Hawke-Keating government, and that was at the same time we had the Reagan government in America and the Thatcher government in Britain, and we moved to a free trade world. And this is one of the reasons why we shouldn't care about what America's doing now. Australia was really stupid, and we jumped into the free trade world head first, and we cut tariffs before everybody else. And what we did was kill this town. My mother was buying a house here, and she now owns that house. So most of the people here own their houses. That's a place called Newcomb. This place is a hellhole called Whittington. Now, these houses are all housing commission houses, but the housing commission allowed people to buy them. So the feeling, even though the disadvantage is the same, the feeling is different. This place is all housing commission houses, and the housing commission didn't allow anybody to buy it. This place is like a slum. This place isn't like a slum, but it has the same issues as this place, and the reason for that is the disadvantage is the same. But my mother owns a house in this right there. That's where I grew up, right there. We didn't have anything else because my mother had to pay for the house. So what was happening in the 70s, me as a child, I just naturally thought, over here you have the Ford Motor Company. I just naturally thought for the rest of my life I'm going to work there and I'm going to be a spot welder. And then when they lifted all the tariffs, the first thing they did was fully automate Fords. So all the spot welders went, because robots can do that work. So my job for life went. My other option was a job at Alcoa, but I'm not really clever enough to work there. You need a higher education level to do that type of work. And I don't mean, I just don't have the brain capacity to work it out. But it doesn't matter, Alcoa's not there anymore. Hopefully this place will become a nature reserve. But tariffs killed Geelong. Now, I'll also list another article. It's not an article, it's an academic paper by these same people, which is also on Geelong, but it's how Geelong's changed. And Geelong's changed and it's become a very middle-class service town. Property in Geelong is starting to rival the price of property, not in those black areas. That's where we're all stuck. Intergenerational poverty. There's no way out for us. But that's what tariffs did to Geelong. Now, the other thing with the tariff stories is, like, we really slurp up America's backside, and it's quite disgusting. But this is a story on Biden finalises China's tariff hikes, including for EVs, batteries and solar panels. The administration's increase for this year include 100% tariff on electric vehicles and a 25% tariff on lithium-ion EV batteries and a 50% tariff on photovoltaic solar cells. Just like to point out that these are a lot worse than Trump's tariffs. How come we didn't have a blue fit when this happened? How come Biden wasn't destroying the world economic rules-based order when he decided, and that's what he was doing, by the way, but like, this is a very good article of saying how this is all really good for America that these tariffs are coming on. And I don't necessarily disagree with that, by the way. Now we come to another article from the ABC. The cattle industry is quietly optimistic that beef tariffs will not be on Trump's menu. Now there's a very, very funny thing here. This is how our Australian government and industries in Australia think. But Donald Trump also loves hamburgers and would understand the political importance of keeping burger prices affordable. Perhaps that's why Australia's cattle industry is quietly confident of having another strong year of beef exports to the US. So we're not getting tariffs on our cows because Donald Trump likes to eat McDonald's. And I've got a really big, lovely picture. This is how ridiculous this argument is. It's not like we're having a common sense argument. How Donald Trump's new tariffs could end up hurting Australia. Like, it's really ridiculous. How could Trump's tariffs hurt Australia? Like, really, what do we actually sell to them? Are we having a blue fit about nothing? Are we having a blue fit because, like, we've got nothing else to talk about on the subject of Donald Trump? So, like, I just think he's an idiot, but I also think he doesn't matter. And what all this shows is that all the stuff we've been told about the rules based order that I've always known was garbage is garbage. Like, they're not even hiding it anymore. Um, how can we talk about a rules based order when all this sort of stuff's happening and the rest of the world isn't banding together against America for ripping up and throwing out all of the WTO agreements? The fact that that's not happening means that we never had a rules based order. The rules based order was the rules according to the United States, and if you don't want to obey those rules, we got some really big guns we'd like to point at you. That's the rules based order. Now I'm going to tell you why I like tariffs. Tariffs are just a tax. They're nothing more than a tax. The last time we had heaps of tariffs, I was a child and I had a prospect of a job for life. It wouldn't have been a very fulfilling job, but that's why you get 4 weeks off every year so that you can go on holidays. And the pay would have been quite all right for someone of my class to survive. For 150 years, my class had been trained to do shitty jobs in factories. Now, those jobs were shitty jobs, and they were unsafe jobs, and they were probably dangerous jobs, and the life expectancy of people who worked at Ford's back in the 1970s was 65. But our quality of life was so much better. So they've improved our life expectancy and dropped our quality of life, and also told us we all have to work for longer. But that's for another thing. Getting back to these Biden's 100% tariffs on electric cars, because this is the easiest way to explain how tariffs work, because it's nice and round, it's 100%. And I left school at 13, so I'll say all this with the proviso of one thing. I'm an idiot. I left school at 13, and what I'm saying could be completely wrong, and there's probably a million reasons why academic people can say I'm totally wrong about what I'm saying. All I know as somebody who left school at 13 years was when we had tariffs, I had a prospect of a job for life. When we took them away, that prospect went away and has never ever come back. And the children from the neighbourhood where I come from are still stuck in that neighbourhood, and their children are stuck in that neighbourhood. And because I'm so old now, their children are also stuck in that neighbourhood. So we now have 3 generations of people living in the Housing Commission houses designed for one generation. And none of them have moved anywhere since the 1980s, and it's not their fault, it's the system's fault. The system dictates that we need places like this so that everybody else can be lifted up in the high tide of economics. That's the economic system we have. That's why they want unemployment of 4.3%. Right? Imagine that. We have a system where unemployment's meant to be 4.3%. So it's for the greater good. Yeah, well, the greater good argument doesn't really work. But anyway, the 100% tariff on electric vehicles. This is how a tariff works. Let's say an electric vehicle costs $50,000 in America after it's shipped from China. And the person who's going to buy that vehicle is going to pay $50,000. Well, that person's not me. And I can guarantee you that person's... Sorry, I bumped the mic. I can guarantee you that person's not going to be you either. Right? And the person who's going to pay $50,000 for that electric vehicle, well, you add another 100% tariff on that. That car's now 100 grand. That person's still going to buy that car because, quite frankly, To be buying that car, they're probably a privileged wanker, right? So look at a tariff as a privileged wanker tax rather than calling it a tariff. Right? But either way, this privileged wanker in California who really needs his electric vehicle, he's going to buy that electric vehicle, whether it costs 50 grand or whether it costs 100 grand. He's probably a rich wanker that works for Google anyway. Right? Like, think about the people who are buying these cars. I saw an electric Porsche the other day in Cairns. It was hilarious. Beautiful looking body. Beautiful. Why do electric cars have bloody bonnets too? That's another strange thing. But anyway, I've gotten off tangent. That rich privileged wanker is still going to buy that car at 100 grand. So what a tariff has actually done is given a $50,000 tax to a rich wanker who can afford it anyway. What's important is what the bloody government does with that money. If the government uses tariffs for wealth transfer, then a tariff isn't a bad thing. But if a government uses a tariff just to pay off the military industrial complex and prosecute wars like Ukraine and prosecute wars that's like the Middle East and what's happening in Northern Africa and stuff, if that's what they're going to do with the money for the tariffs, then I'm totally against the tariffs. But if they're going to use it for wealth transfer, and by that I mean grow the public service, all these people saying let's shrink the public service in Australia and isn't Dutton really good, he's going to sack 36,000 people in the public service. Albo's piss weak and he doesn't know how to prosecute an argument on that, by the way. Having a bloated public service is just a form of wealth transfer. What happens? So we should be introducing tariffs. And the reason that the media doesn't want us to introduce tariffs, the reason all the economists don't want us to lift tariffs, the reason the politicians don't want tariffs is because it's a tax on them. It's not a tax on me. It's not a tax on you. And why isn't it a tax on me and you? Because you and me aren't buying that crap. Right? And maybe we should have a high tariff on things like iPhones and all these fancy toys. Like, I don't have any food in me cupboard, but I got a bloody computer there that most people would have a multiple orgasm over. Like, and why do I have that? Because in this crazy capitalist stuffed up world that we live in, it was easier for me to put a brand new computer on my desk. Mind you, a close friend, after watching me try and save for 2 years to buy a computer, went, look, I'll lend you the money and you can pay me off. And so that's what's happening. But it was easier to put a computer on my desk that cost $4 grand all up with all this stuff around me. It was more for my mental health than anything else. I don't have some fantasy I'm going to make heaps of money doing this stuff. But it's really good to come on here and yell. There's something really wrong with all that. And maybe we should have tariffs on all these toys that people have. Because, yeah, it's ridiculous. Maybe iPhones that cost $2,000 should have a 20% tariff on it, meaning that $200 would have to go to the government. Because if I can afford to spend, and I can't afford to spend $2,000 on an iPhone, I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about the public servant. Then that public servant can afford the $200 tariff on that iPhone, and if that $200 is then used to pay someone's social security at the Henderson poverty line, then that's wealth transfer. That's how it works. We shouldn't be against when all the people at the universities and all the people in Parliament and all the people who own mining companies, and all the people who own media companies, and all the people who work for them get out there and say tariffs are a bad thing, tariffs are a bad thing, tariffs are a bad thing. Maybe we should stop and have a think about what they're saying. Maybe we should stop and ask, why do all these people with all the money keep on saying tariffs are a bad thing? Is it because the toys they buy go up in price? Is it because tariffs might be one of the only way you can tax the elite? Because you tax them at the checkout? Like, the stuff they're talking and having multiple orgasms about Trump putting tariffs on have no effect to the common person. It only affects the privileged people in our society. Yet everyone's getting upset about what Trump's doing. Ask yourself this. If Trump's just an actor and if everything's just an act to appease the masses, is Trump's job so that we can all blame everything on him? Right? Is that the job he's playing in this Machiavellian play that these elites seem to be playing with us? Is Trump's job just to Is Trump's job just to point at him and say, "You're the monster, everything's your fault"? Like, I don't see as somebody living at the bottom of the poverty line, I don't see, and I'm not living at the bottom of the poverty line. There's a family just down the road living in a tent and they've got a baby that's less than a year old. I think there's a hell of a lot further down the ladder than me. I'm not one of these privileged wankers on the internet who actually think that life's all bad for me. I'm extremely privileged, even though I'm cash poor and I have a very, very low income, around about 20 grand a year. But yeah, so stop having multiple orgasms about Donald Trump every time the media tell you to have them. The stuff he's doing doesn't affect us. We're common people. Donald Trump isn't going to take your job away at McDonald's in Cairns. Donald Trump isn't going to take your job away as an accountant. And Donald Trump isn't going to take your job away as a consultant for the government. So stop trying to con us into making us think he's going to take away the job that we don't have. And don't just stop trying to con us into thinking he's responsible for the fact that we don't have a job. Right? It's all very well to invent a boogeyman, but the real boogeyman in the picture is how connected we are to America. And yeah, like, this whole Donald Trump thing should be sparking a conversation asking, should we be moving to BRICS? And the media is failing in that, and that's why they want you all stressed about tariffs. When Donald Trump goes away, anything that they don't like, they're just going to change. Right? Like, it's only a temporary thing. Stop stressing about it. I've got a lot of yard work to do now. It's very late in the day. Insider's morning always does that to me. I hope you all stay safe. Please like and subscribe. And just remember, if you're entitled to redress, chances are you'll win a civil lawsuit. Go and speak to a lawyer, but try and stay away from class actions. Stay safe, have a good day, and goodbye.